So it gives me great pleasure to introduce Abbie Brewer to you. Thanks, Abbie.
So I'm obviously Abbie, and I am starting next week. I'll be a student children's nurse. So I want to take you all back to when it all started, I guess, which was about 6 years ago, when I was 14, 15 years old. And when I say it, I don't mean my mental health issues, because I'm sure that they probably started way before that. When I say it, I mean that was when I started speaking about them. I remember it clear as day. I was sat in my teacher's classroom with butterflies whizzing around my stomach, a bit like they are now, slowly packing up my stuff as I knew I didn't want to leave. I wanted to speak to him and tell him what was going on. Eventually he asked me if I was okay, and instead of giving him a proper answer, I said something similar to what Shirley was talking about earlier, which was, "What is the meaning of life, sir?" He said, well, he didn't reply to start with, and he didn't find this very strange. Like, I would have expected most teachers to find that pretty strange, but he didn't, mainly probably because he taught philosophy, so he's kind of used to that kind of thing. But I think he knew that it wasn't curiosity that had stirred up this question, it was desperation. See, for the past few months, my mood had dropped significantly, and so much so that I didn't see the point in living. It had gotten so bad that my body had kind of become disconnected from my brain, and it was pretty much hell. And all I wanted to do was talk to someone. A few months prior to this, I'd been outed as gay in my school, and I'd spoken to different teachers, to a different teacher about that. But the minute I mentioned my feelings, I was cut off. And I was nicknamed Eeyore, which was a nickname that I kept until I left that school when I was 19. And this was by a teacher, so he was the only one who called me it. My philosophy teacher, however, reacted differently. He listened. That afternoon, he must have listened for around 2 hours, and it felt amazing. He told me he'd pass on some of the information to pastoral and see if he could get me any help. The school gave me counselling. However, the only thing she wanted to talk about was my sexuality. The minute I mentioned suicidal thoughts, she cut me off and changed the subject. I didn't see her for very long and was then left without proper support. I started speaking to my philosophy teacher again and my DT teacher, who I eventually managed to open up to. They managed to help me get through my GCSEs, and they were supporting my well-being throughout of that. The school didn't like this very much, as they didn't see it was part of their job, but they felt that it was. You may be wondering where my parents lie in all this story. Well, they split when I was young. I was around 6, 7, which was fine. It was not traumatic for me at all. I lived with my mum and my twin sister, and I got to see my dad pretty regularly. But things changed when my mum got into an abusive relationship, and this led to my mum developing severe anxiety and anorexia. So as I got older, I never really spoke to her about that kind of thing in order to protect her. And I never told my dad, as my dad is one of them people who would just worry at anything. Like if I stub my toe, it's, "Oh, you all right, Abbie?" Like that kind of sort of issues. So after GCSEs, I stayed on in my school sixth form, and the first few weeks in, my mental health deteriorated rapidly. I didn't want to tell my teachers, as I wanted them to think that they'd done an amazing job, and which I felt that they did, and that I was doing well, and I didn't want to worry them. I then took an attempt on my life, and I didn't go to a teacher to speak about this. I went to my mum, who shouted at me and got understandably quite angry and upset. This then led to a referral to CAMHS. I saw a clinical psychologist once a week for about 6 months to have CBT. During this time, this took the weight off my teachers, and I only spoke to my therapist. I was never fully honest, and I was diagnosed with depression and anxiety with self-harm. I went back to my teachers, and as always, they were there to listen, but they didn't really know what they could do. They encouraged me to go back to the doctors, but the doctor just told me that it was regular teenage angst and that my feelings were partly due to the fact that I didn't have a boyfriend. Do you remember the fact that I said that I was gay? Due to my mental health struggles, I failed my AS levels, but I carried on with my teacher's support and completed my resit year and passed. It was in my third year of sixth form, however, where things got a lot worse. I started to engage in weird eating behaviours. When I say weird eating behaviours, it's not very normal to spend 2 weeks eating just beetroot. Severe mood swings, and I began having panic attacks. My teachers really began to worry and persuaded me to go back to the doctors. I was then referred to the community mental health team, and within a few sessions of being there, was diagnosed with emotionally unstable personality disorder. I was relieved, which may sound like a bizarre thing to say when you've got that kind of diagnosis, but it meant I could finally get the help that I needed. And so were my teachers. And I was also terrified. I was a few months away from leaving school, and that also meant that I was a few months away from leaving all of my support network. And so that ended up with me taking another attempt on my life. I didn't tell anyone, and I was fine in the end. And because of that, because nothing happened, I decided that I may as well actually start living and doing stuff. So I ended up getting involved in lots of different charity work. Some of that work was with Stonewall, who are obviously the massive LGBT charity within the UK, and the other part of that work was within Times Change. And that helped me immensely. That year, I got into uni to study philosophy, which I wouldn't say is the best thing to do when you're struggling to think of the meaning of life. I did that for a year, and then I decided that I couldn't see the point in it, so I stopped. But I wouldn't have been able to get that far without the help of my teachers and without their listening ears. I'm forever grateful for what they did, because they listened, which was something that I wasn't used to. And I'm still in contact with them today, which is just amazing. I still struggle, but I'm now well enough to next week start my nursing degree, which is something that I've always wanted to do. Don't ask me why I didn't apply for it last year, because I have no idea. And whenever I get low, I remember the things that the teachers said to me. The one that sticks with me the most, and it's one that I'm going to leave you with, was, I have never lost a student once, Abbie, and I'm not going to start with you.